if I want the world to be different, if I want my world to be different, then I have to live differently. And what I can say is that I'm very thankful. I'm very, I'll use the word grateful, although it's usually not a part of my vocabulary. I'm very thankful and grateful that I know this, that I have this information. Now, when I talk about knowing, I'm not talking about intellectual comprehension. I'm talking about an experience that exists beyond intellectual comprehension. It's an all-consuming identification, a sense of that without the information that has been passed on to me, I have no idea where my life would be today.
Thank you from my heart, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you from my heart, from the bottom of my heart.
Stay connected to gratitude. Hit the follow button right now and join thousands of listeners tuning in each week. We're the Gratitude Seekers. Come join us. Our guest today was enlisted in the US Army at age 17 and served in the Vietnam War as a helicopter crew chief. He was honorably discharged at the age of 20 and was awarded numerous medals, including a Purple Heart. After battling severe PTSD, isolation, and addiction, he discovered Buddhist practice and began intensive training and study. In 1995, he was fully ordained as a Zen Buddhist monk in the Japanese Soto Zen tradition. Since then, our guest has dedicated his life to addressing the causes and consequences of violence, war, and suffering among individuals, families, and societies. Using the tools of Buddhist practice and insight, he educates and accompanies people in the peaceful transformation of conflict and suffering. Claude AnShin, welcome to the Gratitude Podcast.
Thank you, Georgia.
It's a real honor and a real pleasure to have you here, and I'm really blessed to be able to be in your presence and to enjoy the peace you bring with your presence. So, thank you for being part of the Gratitude Podcast.
You're most welcome, Georgia.
So, let us know a little bit more about you, about your story.
Where would you like that to begin? It can get quite long.
So, take us back a little bit to when you were 17 and you enlisted in the U.S. Army.
Sure.
How was that experience for you, and how did that get you to where you are today?
Well, what I can say is that at 17, I really thought that I thought that I knew something. Only now, when I look back, I can realize how naive I was and how little I really knew. And I will say that I enlisted in the military directly out of high school. I don't know. I would say that I chose to go in to the military, but it's not exactly true. I mean, of course, I chose, but at the age of 17, I was not um, permitted by law to legally sign a contract. And when one joins the US military, one must sign a contract. So my father had to sign for me. Some history is that my father had been a soldier in the Second War, and the community where I grew up, which was in rural northwest Pennsylvania, a small, very small town, a village. The name was Waterford. And probably 70 to 80% of the men living in Waterford had served in the Second War. So I was surrounded by this war culture. The films that I watched, the books that I read, I was being conditioned in a particular way. Also, growing up, I was quite athletic and participated in sort of the major American sports, football, baseball, basketball, wrestling. And what I've discovered over time is that the foundation of these, of competitive athletics in this country, I also witness it in Europe, is quite, it borders on being paramilitary training. The language of competitive athletics, especially in the United States, is often they use military type language, going to war, my brothers, my sisters, they have military planes fly over the stadiums, and they have this big celebration with the flag and the U.S. flag and the anthem, and it's militarized in a way. So I was surrounded by this and consumed by that. So my conditioning was such that even though I thought I was choosing, really the conditioning of the sports that I participated in, the family I grew up in, the society that I was exposed to, they were actually funneling me in that direction, unconsciously, but I was being funneled in that direction. I joined the military because I thought that going in the military would somehow make me special. I was also, because I felt in a way sort of invisible as a young adolescent. And what I'm saying now is not something I had access to when I was that age. When I left to go to the military, my father drove me to the nearest bigger city, a place named Erie, Pennsylvania. And there I boarded a bus that took me to a place called Buffalo, New York. My father took me to the bus station. He dropped me off, said goodbye, and left. Didn't stay, no emotion, nothing. He just left. And really, I can't even begin to describe how I felt. I took the oath to join the military in Buffalo, New York. Then I was sent to a military training base in New Jersey. And I realized when I got off the bus at this military base that the military was not something, I just knew that this was not what I had thought it would be. And there was a large piece of me that really just didn't want to be there. However, once you're there, the cost of not being there is really great. I mean, if I would have created the circumstances to leave the military or be thrown out of the military, that information would have stayed with me the rest of my life. And it would have created a great deal of problems in my life. It's not dissimilar to being to spending time in let's say the consequences of a bad exit from the military, or an undesirable exit from the military. The consequences on us as individuals is not dissimilar to the consequences faced by people who are getting out of prison. It's incredibly difficult to get jobs. It's difficult to get any support at all from the government if you can get it. I somehow turned a corner. I became, I was very, because I was an athlete, I was very good at the military. I was really good in training. I was very good in all the things they asked me to do. And as a result, I received some specialized training in Europe, in Germany. And then while experiencing that training, I volunteered to go to Vietnam. What I would also talk about here is that while in the military here I started to consume alcohol without any restrictions, because it didn't matter how old I was. And I quickly got into a lot of trouble with alcohol. Alcohol was beginning to make my decisions for me. My solution to this problem was to leave the circumstances that I was in, and I did that by volunteering to go to Vietnam. I told myself that if I volunteer to go to war, and that if I serve in war honorably, and I'm decorated, I get some awards and medals and things. When I come home, then all of the stories that I'd read and all of the films that I had seen, I would be greeted as a hero. Jobs would be offered to me, available to me, and people would love and respect me. That wasn't the truth. It isn't generally the truth. Even if people appear to love and respect you, once you begin to talk about the truth of military service, they quickly either leave, they leave emotionally, psychologically, they just detach from you, or they leave physically. They are really not interested in what the combat experience was actually like for us. I do want to mention one thing. In your introduction, you mentioned the term post-traumatic stress disorder. What I have come to understand is that I am not disordered. I do live with post-traumatic stress, but disorder, the term disorder speaks to that there is something not okay with me. And actually that's not the case here. The way I experience the world, the way how I interact with the circumstances of my existence now are affected by my military service and combat. They're affected by the violence I experienced, that I participated in. It just makes, my relation to the world just makes sense. I was injured quite seriously in Vietnam. I spent a significant amount of time in hospital. And when I was released and came back to Pennsylvania, I came back with the notion that I just wanted things to be the way they were before I left. I just wanted all of what I had experienced in Vietnam to be behind. Just forget about it. I wanted it to be behind me. That was not possible then, and it's not possible now. I will say that My father died at a very young age. He died at the age of 53 in the year 1973. The death certificate says that he died of a heart attack in his sleep. What I know is that my father's lifestyle killed him. My father never spoke about the truth of his military experience, his training, or the actual experiences that he had. The way, and my father used he used intoxicants, alcohol, tobacco. He used them in excess as a way, what I understand as a way of attempting to keep the real cost of those experiences at a distance. My father drank alcoholically, and he's smoking 60 cigarettes a day. He was a school teacher, well liked, well respected, and yet simply just not available. But what he was teaching me through his behavior was how I was to deal with my experiences coming back from war, and I did just that. I didn't have the skills to manage the power of the feelings that I was exposed to through combat, through training and through combat. In training, I'm taught to dehumanize others. I'm taught to create enemies, and that enemies are anything that anyone or anything that doesn't look like anyone who doesn't look like me, or who doesn't believe the way I believe, and to do that, I lose contact with my own humanity. Coming out of the military and back into civilian life, this training the training and my experiences just didn't have any real-time application. So I was lost, confused, and spent a lot of years I spent a lot of years trapped in a cycle of addiction. Because once I used alcohol and other drugs to keep the feelings at a distance, the more I needed to use them. And I got into a lot of trouble with that. War, violence under any circumstances, really is just not a solution. Even when it appears to work, it doesn't really work. We can see that today. So yes, I live with post-traumatic stress. Post-traumatic stress being an aspect of a more comprehensive understanding of what those of us who experience violence in war, in family situations, in interpersonal interactions, the more comprehensive understanding is labeled with the term moral injury, the betrayal of what's right, the betrayal of all that we believe to be true. Post-traumatic stress being an aspect. Moral injury is a wounding. It's not a psychological disorder. It has its psychological components, but it's actually a wounding. And so those of us who are trained, those of us who have fought, those of us who are trained to fight, those of us who have experienced violence at any level, whether it be physical, emotional, psychological, we experience this. We are wounded. We experience this woundedness.
Exactly. It makes so much sense, and I really appreciate you explaining this and sharing with us this perspective, because it's something that we're used to, but there is this small difference from our point of view in wording, but it matters so much for someone who is in that particular situation. And yeah, I think that really makes a great difference. And I've read that especially for this, for post-traumatic stress, there is some research that gratitude is helpful. Did you feel that gratitude has helped you with post-traumatic stress?
Um, I'm, I'm not. I'm cautious about the word gratitude. I'm also cautious of words like peace and love, and because there are so many ideas attached to them about what they mean. What has been really helpful to me is understanding that the roots of my decisions were preformed, that I was conditioned to them, accepting that yes, I did for my actions I am responsible, but that my actions make sense based on how I was shaped to view the world by the circumstances I grew up in. So accepting that this is like this, and then action. If I want the world to be different, if I want my world to be different, then I have to live differently. And what I can say is that I'm very thankful. I'm very, I'll use the word grateful, although it's usually not a part of my vocabulary. I'm very thankful and grateful that I know this, that I have this information. Now, when I talk about knowing, I'm not talking about intellectual comprehension. I'm talking about an experience that exists beyond intellectual comprehension. It's an overwhelming sense of it's an overwhelming kind of, not overwhelming. It's an all-consuming identification, a sense of that without the information that has been passed on to me, I have no idea where my life would be today.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And let us know then, how do you define, if you have a particular definition for gratitude or thankfulness?
Well, what I have been led to through my study in Buddhist practice and through living a life rooted in active, living a life rooted in active meditation. People have some conceptions that meditation is simply this sort of sitting someplace in repose, and they have the notion that meditation is supposed to, relieve stress or take away confusion, or that all of the thoughts that race through my head will suddenly disappear. And these are not accurate impressions about what meditation is. Meditation and daily life aren't two things. So gratitude by name is defined depending upon a person's certain angle of perception. And so what I encourage people to do is, rather than attempt to get the world to conform to their ideas of things, just to sit, invite more silence into their life, walk more slowly, talk more softly, adopt some basic premises, a commitment to not kill. And by not killing, how can we define that in terms of our own lives? And out of that grows the experience of gratitude, which may be different from the idea. And the experience of gratitude is not a fixed place. It can show itself then in different ways, in different forms, as we let go of our attachments to the idea of it.
That makes sense. And So basically, what you're saying is that it's an experience. It's something that's very personal, and that you get to see for yourself, basically, when we let go of attachments, right?
Yes, I would say, and this is another tricky one. Let go of attachments. What does letting go mean? And again, letting go is not that these attachments ever are gone. The root of my attachments shows itself to me. It can pop up. They can pop up at different points in time, and with this disciplined practice that's been given to me, rooted in a life of active meditation, I when those attachments show up, I have the possibility to recognize them, neither reject them nor allow them to control me, and my relationship to them changes. They don't go away. I don't let go of them, but they don't have the same effect on me because I'm conscious of them. I'm more conscious of them. So, yes, it's a complicated. That's a long answer to a simple question. But yes, yes. It's not so much a getting over them as it is living in a different relationship to them. Peace was my unpeacefulness.
So can you give us an example, for instance, how does gratitude feel for you without these attachments, or when do you get in a sense of gratitude? In which
Yeah,
situations?
sure. I can give you I can give you a lot of different examples. So in April of 1983, April 13th exactly, I was living alone in a small cottage in Massachusetts, the U.S. state of Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see any point in life, in existing. I took a massive overdose of drugs because I thought death was the solution. I didn't see how to go on. I didn't see any possibility to live life differently. I survived that drug overdose, and I survived it with all of my mental faculties intact, I think, and my physical capabilities still. I still have my physical capabilities, so I was very fortunate in that respect. That experience gave rise to a meeting with 3 people, and one of them asked me if I was going to overdose again, and I said yes, absolutely. I didn't see any point in going on like this. That in death it had to be better. And this man said to me, "How do you know it's better? Could be worse." And in that moment, I was detoxing from the overdose. I wasn't very clear. I was agitated and not very focused. And I just wanted a cigarette, and I just wanted to get out of this hospital. But when he said that, it was piercing to me. It just broke through all of my ideas and formulations, and there was a truth that I heard there that was unshakable to me. I don't know what's next. And so I went, so the thought then followed, if this is all that I have, if this is what I have right now, I better do something about this. That led me to a clinic where I stopped using alcohol and drugs, and I have stayed stopped. I haven't used not one since the 28th of May 1983. For these various instances, and for me, my life began to open up in ways I never could have imagined, and this I would describe in reflection. I would describe these as moments of being of reflections of gratitude in my life, that I was able to hear, that these people showed up in my life, and that I was able to take some radical actions, which have led to me being in the place that I am today. I would say that all of these are, for me, when I reflect on them, bring up what you are referring to as gratitude.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Seeing the huge impact that one person can have on our life, and also I believe your determination as well to stop even after so much time. I think that's very inspirational and very powerful for many of us that might be having a challenge with different kinds of bad habits. I think it's something that we can all reflect on, and yeah, I can only imagine the gratitude that you must feel for that person or for those people that were basically able to help you turn your life around.
Yes, there are certain instances that they just stay with me. I don't forget them. I don't know this man's name. I don't know who he was, and I don't know what brought him and the other two men with him to my room. I just know that that experience just stayed with me, and I think, his what he said to me was not calculated. It was a response in the moment, and that's what really moves me the most. It's not these calculated gestures. It's the subtle interactions we have on a day-to-day basis. The quiet things like saying hello to someone, just smiling at someone on the street, and saying hello. The interactions with shopkeepers and with, for me, with the inanimate objects in my life. To like I'm just so thankful to have all of the opportunities that have been presented to me as a result of a willingness to live differently. I will say that with addiction, it's not so much the willingness to stop as it is the willingness to stay stopped. The understanding that there is no solution within those. There is no solution within that framework.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and indeed, that's amazing to stay stopped. I think, yeah, I'm guessing many people want to or stop many times, but staying stopped, that can be a challenge, and yeah, it's something that's not always easy for most people.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
It takes great determination, and it takes acceptance, understanding, and action.
Yeah. And on this topic, I really love your perspective on peace, and I think it's very wise, and I just felt like it resonated a lot with me, and it made so much sense. So, can you share with us a little bit your perspective on peace?
Yes, what I often say, and I say this because I actually do live this, is that peace is not the absence of conflict. It's learning how to have conflict without that conflict degenerating into war, violence, and the creation of more suffering. I also make it really clear that I am not a pacifist. What made a great deal of sense to me was Mohandas Gandhi's articulation of his reality with nonviolence. He referred to it as active nonviolence. And this resonates with me. Active nonviolence says that in any given moment, I have the capacity to act violently. But in awareness, I make a conscious choice not to. So in that moment, I am exercising, living at peace with my unpeacefulness. So I am conditioned to respond to certain situations with aggression and violence. And that can manifest itself in many different forms. When to be willing to be present to my own life, so that I'm aware when these situations, when I find myself in such a situation, and I have a consciousness of the feelings that are arising and the thoughts that are being generated by those feelings, and how, when those thoughts and feelings come together, they tell me that I need to act in a certain way, that I have the capacity to not do that. I don't have any enemies today. I engage quite a bit with people who are in the military, who are actively going to war, who are committed to the notion that violence is a solution. But I look at where we are connected, not where we are separate. My intention is not to convince anyone of the rightness of my position and the wrongness of their position, but to meet them where they are at, and to just be stable and solid in the person that I am. For me, and that's the manifestation, a living manifestation of the reality of peace.
That's wonderful, and it makes so much sense. And I think it comes from a wonderful place of acceptance and understanding of the reality of life and the differences we have, like how my reality and my solution doesn't have to be the same as yours, so that I can be at peace, right?
This is correct. And at the same time, Georgiana, it's important for us to be willing to see where we are connected. Mm-hmm. Instead of we're accustomed to focus on where we are separate. We're conditioned to focus on creating separateness, a specialness, and my attitude around these topics has shifted and changed. So I'm looking always to see where are we connected, not where we are different. The differences show themselves all the time, and this for me is another example in my life. I've never defined it like this, but it's another example in my life of how peace organically shows itself.
That's very interesting. Yeah, and I totally resonate with this idea that we're interconnected, and that's one of the reasons why we're grateful, because we're interconnected, because we rely on each other for so many things, and we're able to live the way we live and to enjoy the things that we enjoy thanks to this interconnectedness and to this peace that we got to live. because we see, for instance, right now in Afghanistan, it's really hard for the civilians there because of the war, and because it's harder for people to do what they need to do to get the supplies and everything that they need, so that they can live a normal life, because there is this conflict. And on this, I'm really curious to hear your perspective. So like I mentioned before, as going live, um, I've watched a documentary to better understand the situation there, and there has been a lot of conflict between the religious views and the political views in Afghanistan, at least since that's what I know from the documentary, at least from 1950, probably even before that. And this conflict seems to be continuing one way or another in different stages, and this seems to be just another stage. What could we do, or what could people do there to stop this continuation of violence and war in such a situation? Do they even have a chance to stop this? Because the way I see it, it's very complicated, since it's historic. Like, people have been from the religious um, from the religious part of the nation have been persecuted quite a lot, and also when the religious leaders were in charge, the political ones had to suffer. Could there be an end to this, and could there be peace?
Um, my opinion is there always could be an end to this. However, the people involved, the individuals involved, have to want to bring an end to this. For each of the individuals involved, there is some sort of psychological, emotional, spiritual payoff for continuing this. But see, war and violence are narcotics. They are the most powerful narcotic we can ever expose ourselves to. To detoxify from the consumption of the narcotic of violence requires a great will. I'm not in a position to make any pronouncements about what would be best or what would serve them best. I'm not Afghani. I don't live in Afghanistan. Actually, Afghanistan is in itself it doesn't really exist. Afghanistan was a creation of the British East India Company. It was a geopolitical creation of theirs. The area of Afghanistan is largely tribal. And then it's, how can these tribes learn to live in some kind of harmony? But that's something they have to determine, and that's something that they need to be willing to. They have to determine and have to be willing to ask for help around, understanding that, of course, the premise would be violence is not a solution. I mean, we can see through generation after generation after generation that violence only leads to more violence.
Exactly.
And Afghanistan, my feeling is that Afghanistan couldn't be in any other place than it is right now. It couldn't be. When all we have to do is look at the historical context of the area, and it couldn't have turned out any differently. The various factions that make up what is called Afghanistan, there needs to be some kind of, they have to be willing to to find a place of commonality, a place where they're all connected. And I don't know what that would take. And if they would all sit down, concentrate on their breath, stop eating meat, fish, or poultry, let go of their guns, let go of all of their ideas, and be willing to transform their violence into understanding, acceptance, and an action to live differently, then this area could be different. But I don't know that they're ready to do that. So
Yeah.
all I can do is what I can do is understand that I don't know what's best for Afghanistan.
Mhm.
What I need to do, though, is wake up to the roots of war, violence, and suffering in myself. Be ruthless about this uncovering. And through that process, how to live in a different relationship with this conditioning, a more active and vibrant relation with this conditioning, will show it has shown itself to me and continues to show itself to me. But I needed to be willing to live differently. The process of waking up is not, it can be really uncomfortable and destabilizing at times, or feel destabilizing. However, if I'm willing to just stay the course, it's like if I'm willing to stop using drugs and stay stopped, regardless of what's happening in my life, just stay stopped, stay the course. What grows out of that, what has grown out of that in my life is quite phenomenal. And for that for me is an organic, alive expression of gratitude.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I think it was a great way of ending this interview with this wonderful idea. Let us know and let our audience know where can they find you, where can they get in touch, what you're actually doing right now in the world.
Well, with the realities of COVID, what I'm doing in the world is quite like what I'm doing right here, right now with you. I have the opportunity to travel all over the world. However, I do that, I want to say virtually, but it's not really virtual. We're really talking to one another. There's nothing virtual about this. But the access to the internet and the access to programs like we're using now have given me the opportunity to be in contact with people all over the world in this particular time that we're living in. If people are interested to know more about me personally, or the work that has presented itself for me to do, they can find me via a website. That address is www.zaltho, that's ZALTHO.org. There's a wealth of information in that website. Also, one doesn't have to speak English or be able to read English to access that website, because it will translate into a multitude of languages if you ask it to. There are selection buttons and so. Also, I've had the privilege of having 2 books published. At Hell's Gate is the first one. It's a soldier's journey from war to peace. It was published by Shambhala Books and is available in a variety of languages and can be found on Amazon. Now, if people have issues, I know some people have issues with Amazon, they can then come, if they're interested in the book, they can then come to the website that I just gave the address to, and we can organize books for them. Also, the second book, the one most recently published, is titled Bringing Meditation to Life. It's published by Oakwood Publishing. Right now, the book is available only in English, although there are some, there's a Spanish and German translation waiting to be published, also Italian, waiting to be published. That book is also available through Amazon or through the website that I gave the address to. In the US, there are a number of different places where the book can be purchased, but in Europe, just now, in Amazon, or actually there's a European website that also where the book can be located, because there is a European extension of the Zaltho Foundation. Its name is the Zaltho Sangha. That's SANGHA. And that website is www.zaltho, ZALTHO.org or .de. So it's a German language website. I think also that site will translate into different languages as well. If it doesn't, my mistake.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. We'll have the links in the description of this episode so that it's easier for our listeners to get to your website with just one click or tap on their phone. Once again, thank you very much for being here with us, for sharing all of your wisdom and your life story. I really appreciate it.
Georgianne, you're very welcome. And it's been a pleasure to spend this time with you. It really has. Thank you. And for the work that you're doing by hosting this podcast. I bow to you for that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.